The auction. The Silverpine County Equipment Auction buzzed with its usual energy. Under the steel beams of the exhibition hall, morning light filtered through dusty skylights, illuminating rows of surplus equipment and eager bidders. Vendors called out deals while auctioneers maintained their rapid-fire pace. Item 34, Working Spotlight Tower, no reserve. Who'll give me 50 to start? The auctioneer's voice boomed across the concrete floor. But the energy shifted when Lot 47 was led into the ring. Shadow, an 8-year-old German Shepherd, limped cautiously into the center. His left hind leg dragged slightly, a lasting reminder of his final mission as a K9 search and rescue dog. His once proud coat was dull and patchy, marked by old scars and stress. The thin leather collar around his neck looked years overdue for replacement. His golden eyes, though clouded with pain, still held traces of the alertness that once made him legendary. Lot 47, retired police dog, German Shepherd, 8 years old. Injured on duty, comes with full training documentation, the auctioneer announced, his usual briskness faltering. We'll start bidding at $100. Silence. Whispers rippled through the crowd, poor thing's probably got PTSD. Look at that leg, he's done for. Ain't worth the vet bills. The auctioneer tried again, lowering the price. 90. 80. 70. Still nothing. Officer Megan Holloway stood to the side, arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched. She had trained Shadow from puppyhood, watched him save lives and face danger without hesitation. Now he was just an unwanted lot gathering dust. 60. 50. The auctioneer's voice began to crack. In the back row, 10-year-old Leia sat beside her grandfather Raymond, knees pulled to her chest. She hadn't spoken since the accident that took her parents 3 months ago. But as she watched the broken dog standing alone in that ring, something stirred inside her. Her small hand rose steadily into the air. $50, she said quietly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the small girl whose first words in months had just saved a hero's life. Going once, going twice, sold to the young lady in the back. As Shadow was led toward his new family, his amber eyes met Leia's. For the first time in months, both the wounded dog and the silent child felt something they'd forgotten existed: hope. The homecoming. Raymond Grant's modest bungalow at the end of Maple Street had seen its share of quiet days, but nothing like the tense stillness that settled over it after Shadow's arrival. The house seemed to hold its breath around two wounded souls learning to coexist. Shadow refused to eat that first night. Raymond placed a bowl of boiled chicken near the living room hearth, but the dog only stared at it with those clouded eyes before turning away with a heavy sigh. The retired mechanic had fixed plenty of broken things in his 72 years, engines, transmissions, even hearts torn by war, but this was different. This was a dog who grieved, and a granddaughter whose voice had vanished the day sirens echoed through their lives. Leia retreated to her room, a converted sunporch with faded yellow curtains and wide windows overlooking the backyard. Her bed sat beside a bookshelf full of stories she no longer read aloud. But Shadow, despite Raymond's attempts to set up a comfortable spot in the den, refused to stay anywhere else. With quiet determination, the injured dog would limp back to Leia's doorway each time, settling beside her bed like a sentry on duty. His breathing eventually matching the rhythm of hers as they both stared at the ceiling, two survivors finding solace in shared silence. Dr. Nathan Ellis, the neighborhood veterinarian, stopped by uninvited but welcomed. A tall man with gentle hands and tired eyes, he examined Shadow's swollen joint with practiced care. He's not just recovering physically, Nathan said softly, his fingers pressing gently around the damaged leg. This dog's been through something no amount of medicine can quite reach. He needs to feel useful again. Raymond nodded, but his eyes drifted to Leia's room where she sat cross-legged on the rug, holding a book in her lap. She wasn't reading aloud, not yet, but her lips moved silently, as if testing forgotten words. That night, as the house settled into its usual hush, Raymond paused outside Leia's door. Inside, she sat with her knees pulled to her chest, Charlotte's web propped open across her legs. Shadow lay beside her bed, his breathing deep and even for the first time since his arrival. For just a moment, Raymond glimpsed what might be possible, two broken hearts learning to beat in sync, finding strength in each other's wounds. The first steps. 2 weeks passed before the breakthrough came, arriving not with fanfare but with the soft whisper of a child's voice reading to a dog who listened like his life depended on it. Raymond discovered them one Thursday evening, having followed the faint sound of words drifting down the hallway. He found Leia sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, Charlotte's web open in her lap, while Shadow lay stretched beside her, his massive head resting on his paws. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it was there, the first time she'd read aloud since before the accident. Shadow's ears twitched with each word, his golden eyes never leaving her face. Raymond backed away quietly, not wanting to break the spell. The next morning brought another small miracle. Shadow ate his breakfast, not much, just a few bites of kibble, but enough to ease the worry lines around Raymond's eyes. Dr. Ellis had warned that healing would come in small steps, and this felt like the first real one. As days turned into weeks, a routine emerged. Leia would read to Shadow every evening, her confidence growing with each chapter. The dog's appetite slowly returned, and though his limp remained, his movements became less labored. Most importantly, the haunted look in his eyes began to fade. One afternoon, while Leia practiced reading in the backyard, Shadow suddenly lifted his head, alert and focused. A neighbor's cat had gotten stuck in a tree, its frightened mewing echoing across the yard. Without hesitation, Shadow limped to the base of the tree and began barking, not aggressively, but with purpose, calling for help. Raymond came running, followed by Mrs. Peterson from next door. Together, they rescued the stranded cat while Shadow watched with satisfaction, his tail wagging for the first time since arriving. "He's still got it," Raymond murmured, watching the dog settle back beside Leia. "Still knows how to help." That night, as Leia read the final chapter of Charlotte's Web, her voice grew stronger with each sentence. When she reached the end, she looked down at Shadow and said, "What should we read next?" The question hung in the air like a promise. For the first time in months, both of them were thinking about tomorrow. Finding purpose. Spring arrived with unexpected possibilities. Dr. Ellis had been watching Shadow's progress with professional interest and growing amazement. The dog's physical therapy sessions in the backyard had evolved into something more, a rekindling of his natural instincts. "Have you considered therapy work?" Dr. Ellis asked Raymond one afternoon, watching Shadow gently guide Leia through their daily walk around the neighborhood. "There's a program at Mercy General Hospital. They're always looking for certified therapy dogs." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "With his leg? His history?" "Sometimes the wounded make the best healers," Dr. Ellis replied. "Shadow understands trauma in a way most dogs never will. And look at what he's done for Leia." It was true. Over the past month, Leia had begun speaking more frequently, though still quietly. She'd started attending school again, with Shadow walking her to the bus stop each morning. Their bond had become the talk of the neighborhood, the silent girl and her limping guardian. The therapy dog evaluation took place on a sunny Tuesday morning. Shadow performed each task with quiet dignity, walking calmly through crowds, remaining still while strangers petted him, and showing remarkable restraint when children played nearby. His limp was noticeable, but his gentle nature and intuitive responses to human emotion were extraordinary. When a young boy at the testing facility began crying after falling off his bike, Shadow immediately limped over and laid his head across the child's lap, staying perfectly still until the tears stopped. "Certified," the evaluator announced with a smile. "This dog has a gift." Their first official visit to Mercy General's pediatric ward was scheduled for the following week. Leia insisted on coming along, not as a patient this time, but as Shadow's assistant. "He needs me there," she explained to Raymond, her voice stronger than he'd heard it in months. "We're a team." Watching them prepare for their first therapy session, Leia brushing Shadow's coat while he patiently endured her fussing, Raymond realized something profound had happened. Two broken souls hadn't just healed each other, they'd discovered their purpose. The night before their first hospital visit, Leia sat beside Shadow's bed, gently stroking his graying muzzle. "Tomorrow we get to help other kids feel better," she whispered. "Just like you helped me." Shadow's tail thumped softly against the floor, and for the first time since the auction, his eyes were clear and bright with anticipation. They had found their calling together. Second chances. 6 months later, Shadow and Leia had become fixtures at Mercy General Hospital. Every Thursday afternoon, they would make their rounds through the pediatric ward, bringing comfort to children facing their own battles with pain and fear. Shadow moved slowly through the hallways, his limp now barely noticeable after months of gentle exercise and purpose-driven activity. Children would light up when they saw him coming, and nurses often remarked how his presence seemed to ease even the most difficult days. Leia, now 11 and finding her voice again, had become Shadow's perfect partner. She would read stories to bedridden children while Shadow rested his graying head on their blankets, offering silent comfort that medicine couldn't provide. "He knows," Dr. Sarah Chen, the pediatric supervisor, often told visiting families. "Somehow this dog just knows exactly what each child needs." On a particularly difficult day, when 8-year-old Marcus refused to speak after his surgery, it was Shadow who made the breakthrough. The dog limped over to the boy's bed and simply laid down beside it, mirroring the child's silence. For an hour, they shared the quiet understanding that sometimes words weren't necessary. When Marcus finally reached out to touch Shadow's scarred fur, he whispered, "Did it hurt when you got hurt?" Shadow's gentle eyes seemed to answer, "Yes, but it gets better." The transformation in both Shadow and Leia hadn't gone unnoticed by the community. Officer Megan Holloway visited them at the hospital one Thursday, watching from the doorway as her former K-9 partner worked his quiet magic with the children. "I always knew he was special," she told Raymond afterward, wiping tears from her eyes. "But I never imagined he'd find a second career in healing." "Second chances," Raymond replied, watching Leia giggle as Shadow gently played with a young patient. "Sometimes they're better than the first ones." As autumn painted the leaves gold and red, Shadow celebrated his 9th birthday surrounded by his hospital family. The children had made him cards, and the nurses presented him with a new collar, bright blue with "Therapy Dog" embroidered in gold letters. That evening, as they sat in their backyard watching the sunset, Leia wrapped her arms around Shadow's neck. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered into his fur. Shadow's tail wagged slowly, contentedly. He had spent years rescuing people from disasters, but his greatest rescue had been finding this little girl who saved him right back. Dr. Ellis, stopping by for Shadow's regular checkup, found them both asleep on the porch swing, Leia curled against Shadow's side, a book of poetry open in her lap. The dog's breathing was deep and peaceful, his face relaxed in a way it hadn't been since his police days. "How's our hero doing?" Raymond asked quietly. "Better than ever," Dr. Ellis replied, watching the unlikely pair. "He's found his purpose again." They both have. 2 years have passed since that day at the auction when a silent girl's voice rang out to save a forgotten hero. Shadow still limps, and some days are harder than others, but every Thursday he and Leia walk through those hospital doors knowing they're exactly where they belong. The wounded K-9 who was left behind had found something better than his old life, he'd found a new reason to serve, a little girl who became his voice when the world had forgotten his value, and a second chance that proved sometimes the best rescues happen when broken souls save each other. In the quiet moments before sleep, when Shadow's graying muzzle rests on Leia's pillow and her small hand finds its way to his collar, they both know the truth that brought them together: heroes aren't born perfect, they're born willing to try again. The end.